Running full system acceptance tests as part of a build here on Programming with Palermo.
You are programming with Palermo. You deliver software. You need to move fast, deliver quality, and run your software with confidence. Stay tuned for timeless solutions, simple methods, and topics that will propel you forward. And now your host, lifelong programmer, author, teacher, coach, Christian, and charismatic speaker, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome back to Programming with Palermo. I'm your host, Jeffrey Palermo. I'm so glad that you're here. Hope you're having a real blessed day. And today we're going to look at the full system acceptance test suite that we created in the last episode, and we're going to get it running command line. We're going to prep it for running in a build. We're going to start by making it possible to run in your private build on your local workstation just by running click-to-build.bat, just by running your PowerShell build script, because it's great to launch the application locally and then go over to InUnit or ReSharper or the Visual Studio Test Runner and run the test suite, and that's great, but we want it convenient. If it's not convenient, then the developers on our team won't run it all the time. So we want the developers on our team running it all the time, and so we need to make it a single command or a single double click. And so that's what we're going to do today, and hope it helps. Let's get into it. All right, let's dig into it. So we have our GitHub repository, Git repository right here, github.com/Jeffrey Palermo /onionarchitecture.net 6. We're continuing to kind of use this sample of a church bulletin application. Now it's only a skeleton right now, but we added a branch, issue number 11, run full system acceptance tests in the build. And we can see, if you want to look at the issue, we can see that we have the issue there and we have a branch here. Okay. All right. So that's there. You can look at the code, but let's go over to, let's close that. Let's run this build. I just want to show you that we have taken our full system acceptance tests. Oh, that's a folder that it couldn't. Actually, I am going to get rid of that because we need this folder to be recreated. All right, click to build.bat. And we are running our full system acceptance test suite as a part of the private build now for demonstration purposes. And you can do that now. When it's fresh and new and you're just getting into the habit of it, it's a good thing to run as many verifications as you can in your private build before every developer checks in, because then you get a lot more feedback. Now, over time, you're going to get more and more of these tests, and it's going to slow things down. You're not going to have that luxury. But until then, you have that luxury. So we just did it. It's pretty darn fast. Even with running those tests, look at your whole build took 32 seconds. So that's good. And we have passed 4. So there's 4 of these full system acceptance tests running. And just because we hooked up Cobertura code coverage to all the others, we hooked it up to here. Now, in its current state, it's not actually going to check the production code. So it's not terribly useful at this time. But if we come in here and go to the code, what we can see, and by the way, if you're not familiar with Selenium tests, take a jump back to the previous episode of Programming with Palermo, and you'll see how we developed this full system test, how we integrated Selenium and did all that. So we have our counter increments tester, and it's using Selenium. It's using a test driver wrapper in order to get our driver there. And so we have 4 test cases defined: the number of button presses and, coincidentally, the expected final count on the counter page of the Blazor default web application is going to be the same. But we're passing those in as arguments, and we are navigating to the arrange part of our test. We are navigating to the right page, and then in the act part, for each of the number of button presses, we are going to click the counter button. And then, of course, we're going to take a screenshot. We're going to number it so that we have unique file names. We're taking all those screenshots, and so we have 4 tests effectively. And if I were to, you saw the test run, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But let's look at what we did to the build PowerShell script, the private build script. And again, if you're jumping in on this and you need a primer on why even we use private build scripts, why even we have a PowerShell script. Go back a few episodes, we dove in really deep on that. But we can see that we have 3 test projects and the path to it. So our source directory is the base/src, and of course in here, source, and look, acceptance test. It kind of corresponds with the Visual Studio solution. And so as we go down, we have a lot of the command line arguments. This is why having a PowerShell script for your private build is really necessary, superior than just doing Control-Shift-B in Visual Studio, because Control-Shift-B is only going to do a compilation, and then you have to remember to switch from debug to release in order to do that. So you really want a command line. And for speed, you want to be able to have the same asset for your private build as you do for your integration build. So here we have our switch treat warnings as error equals true. At a certain point in time, you're very early in the development of a new Visual Studio solution, you want to add that, because sometimes it's not convenient to add it to every project while you're developing, because it's just personal preference. But you definitely want it in your build script. You don't want to accidentally commit some code and have it go through your build process with your team where you actually still have warnings in the code. So add that command line switch, and that protects you from that, regardless of your preference of having it in every project and not even let Visual Studio compile. That's a preference thing, but you definitely don't want code that has warnings getting into your main line and of course being deployed to production. So we have unit tests, integration tests, and then acceptance tests. This is new. We've added this, and let's see if we can shrink this down so that you can see. If I go to the right, all that you're missing is project config, no logo, no restore, no build, and then the verbosity and pass through. Okay, so we are doing a start process so that we can start the web server. So before we run our test, we actually have to have the web application running. Okay, so we're actually going to start the web application with a start process, and we're going to give it the arguments run. We're going to give it the project of the UI-server.cs project. So it literally is running the whole application, and so we're verifying that the application starts up, and we are going to save off the server process. We're going to let it sleep for 1 second to let it get spun up so we don't have any race conditions. And then we are going to run our tests. Okay. We're only going to run the tests of the acceptance test project.
Programming with Palermo is brought to you by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their software with confidence in Azure. If your team has a project that's too important to be delayed or derailed, ClearMeasure can help, while keeping your team in the driver's seat and growing in capability. Click on clearmeasure.com for more information. If you are an architect or .NET engineer aspiring to become an architect, check out clearmeasure.com/careers. Now, back to the show.
And then after that, we are going to stop the process by getting the ID of the process that we saved off. Okay, so that's essentially how it's happening. And if we scroll down, you can see in our private build, which is behind the click-to-build.bat file, we're actually adding the acceptance test right after integration test. Now, for the CI build, I don't add that there because there's some additional configuration that we have to do in a deployment pipeline in order to run acceptance tests on a fully deployed instance. Running it locally, we can have multiple processes going, and it works like a dream with the way the hosted runners are on GitHub Actions as well as Azure Pipelines. It doesn't work the same way it works on your local computer. But in a DevOps pipeline, we actually want to package the application up as a release candidate. We want to deploy the application the way that we're designing it to deploy. Then we want to run the full system acceptance tests on a fully deployed instance in a representative real environment that we've specified and make sure that they run, including all those environmental intricacies that we've added into the application. For just running locally, until these acceptance tests get too slow to reasonably run in a short period of time, we're going to go ahead and add it to the private build, knowing that later on, as we get going, we're going to remove this and just run it when we need to locally. But we want the whole team to get into the habit of running these tests. Okay, so let's just let's give it a go. Let's run click to build.bat again, and we're going to watch. This is that file. I'll fix that, but not in front of you guys. It was deleting the temporary build folder and recreating it. That's there it was, because it didn't delete cleanly because of nested recursive directories. All right, so we are running our application. Let me put it over here. So it's running port 7174, and now here's the first test case. It clicked it once. Here's the second. It's going to click it twice. Third one's going to click it 5 times and verify. Next one's going to click it 9 times. So watch it click that button 9 times. There we go. Those are the test cases. It worked. All 4 of them worked. And that's it. That's as easy as it gets when running full system acceptance tests locally. And let me move my... Oh, I didn't do that. Getting these windows right it's an art form. But that's all it takes. We have 4 of these tests. It's an in-unit test suite, and we're setting it up. Okay. All right. Hope that helps. Every single application that you build, that you start, you need at a minimum these 3 test suites: unit tests, integration tests, and full system acceptance tests. Okay. You can go to town on tons more test suites, but that's just the ticket to the game, regardless of what kind of application that you're running. Unit tests are going to test the logic that runs in process, that really doesn't call out to dependencies. All the code is running in the same memory space. Integration tests the boundary between your application's process, and if you have multiple, then you're going to have multiple instances of these, but it tests the interaction between your application's process and whatever dependency you have. Calling out to a database running on a different server, yep, you need an integration test for that bridge. If you're calling out to some service some service that you own, that you deploy, like if you run your own email server, you need an integration test with that, and then of course you're going to stub third-party dependencies that you don't control and that you can't deploy. But then full system tests everything. So if you call out to Twilio to send text messages, you're going to have a full system test that runs the logic and then makes sure that the text message was sent. You're going to include everything in your application. That's what it means, a full system acceptance test. We are automating the testing in the exact same way that we would test that scenario manually. Okay. All right. Hope that helps. Well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Today, we just blazed right through it. It's that easy to run our full system acceptance tests via the command line. In the private build, as a part of our build.ps1 file, we can double-click, click to build.bat. We can run it command line. Super simple. Now, all of the developers on our team will have a really, really easy way to run the acceptance test suite. No excuses. It's super easy. Now, the test cases that we have in there, they're super simple. They're only going to get more complicated. Your scenarios are going to end up taking longer to run, and that test suite is going to take longer to run. And don't be shy about pulling it out of the private build once it's kind of annoying to run, but just pull it out and you have a PowerShell task to be able to run command line. You can create a new batch file to run full system acceptance tests. And we launched the actual application locally and then ran the tests and then stopped the application locally. So really, really cool. This is every application that you start. Make sure you have your unit test, your integration tests, and your full system acceptance tests. And hope you have a great day. Thank you for programming with Palermo. God bless.
You've been watching Programming with Palermo, your primary place for highly productive programming protocols and practices. Remember, you have what it takes. You can do this. You are a programmer, formed by God Himself and called to this profession for a purpose. You can catch every episode at palermo.network, as well as syndicated locations nationwide. We're so glad you tuned in. Until next time, may God bless you, and thanks for programming with Palermo. Programming with Palermo has made a special arrangement with Marketplace chaplains. Besides programming challenges, we all face issues in life where we need some help. If you'd like, you can call a chaplain confidentially. To speak with a gentleman, dial 512-923-8178. Or to speak with a lady, dial 512-619-6950. The show won't know you called, and everything is kept in strict secrecy. This is a free service, available if you or a friend need it.